Hey everyone, this is your host Prasha and welcome to Her STEM Stories, episode number 55. Before we get started, I want to make a couple of announcements. Number one, now we have a Patreon account. Thanks to Catherine from Grad Self-Care for setting this up. There's some amazing tiers, some of which also include a t-shirt, some stickers, a lot of swag, one-on-one calls with me, and special STEM workshops. So definitely check that out. The link is in the bio. Our first goal is $100 a month. That will help us produce this show even better. And number two, we recently launched our Redbubble shop. So we are finally selling our merchandise, and our first product is stickers. So there are two designs. One is called Diversity in STEM, and the other is called Inclusivity in STEM. And these are just adorable. You would want to have them for your sticker collection, to put on your laptop, to put on your, your bags, or whatever it is that you use stickers on. So please use the link in the episode notes and try to get a few. You'll get almost 50% off if you buy 10 of those. So it'll be about $1 each. So please help us in producing better episodes and also help us in bridging this voice gap in STEM fields. Today's episode is another installment of our Mothers in STEM series. Today we're talking to Sonal, who actually came up with this brilliant idea. She reached out to me on Instagram and said, why don't you do a Moms in STEM series for Mother's Day? And one thing led to another, and here we are celebrating the entire month of May, celebrating moms in STEM and bringing to you these wonderful stories. And I'm super excited for you to learn more about Sonal's story. So let's begin.
Welcome to Her STEM Story, a podcast about real women with extraordinary science, technology, engineering, and mathematics stories. In this show, we'll talk to some absolutely inspiring women and highlight some women-led organizations in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We'll learn more about their work, their struggles, and how they think we can close the gender gap in STEM professions. Keep listening to get inspired.
Motherhood is the most precious thing about being a woman. Media has time and again let us down with terrible portrayals of successful women who have to choose between their careers and their families. Also, the mother's guilt is largely fueled by these stories that are continuously bombarded on us. Life for moms in STEM comes with its own set of challenges, and as someone who wants to have kids and a successful STEM career, I'm curious to learn how women are maneuvering this tricky path. So to celebrate Mother's Day and the entire month of May, we decided to interview some amazing moms in STEM. Born in India, Sonal and her family moved to Canada when she was a teenager. Sonal is an amazing advocate for equality in STEM on Instagram. She is a medical physicist and is currently living in United Kingdom, and she has a 2-year-old son. Her story is filled with wonderful incidents, but also a lot of great lessons. So let's talk to Sonal to learn more about her powerful STEM story. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Honestly, it's a real honor.
Yes, so this is so cool. So I've kind of known you through Instagram for some time now. And this is the best part about social media. You feel like you know these people. You feel like you've met them. And, they're not at all strangers or people who live in other countries and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
And it's funny you just said that because we just had this Addictive Brain meeting. And honestly, Prasha, I didn't feel like I was meeting them for the first time. It was just immediate comfort zone with all of them. So yeah, I think social media is doing a great job.
Yes, I'm glad, that's one side that I'm getting to see more and more with the show. And I hope, that side becomes like the main, that gets more talked about than the negative aspects of it and stuff like that.
So, I think it's what we choose to, right? It's what we choose to talk about.
Yes, I agree. You attract what you put out there, and hopefully, if you put positive content, you attract more positive content, and it definitely flows into a lot of parts of your life and makes you feel more enriched.
Exactly.
Okay, so awesome. So, tell us a little bit about there was something in your form that caught my eye, and this said, "Yet my son has reached his milestones above and beyond his years." So I'm interested, what milestones has your lovely son reached? I hope he's not enrolled in like a master's program already. He's 2 years old, right?
So I don't know how. So normally, there are milestones for every child when they're born. So what they should be doing by age 4 months or 6 months or 10 months. And the doctors actually give you this handout and say, well, at this amount of age, your son should be rolling over or should be holding his head upright and things like that. Yeah. So those are the physical traits or mental attributes that we look forward to when a child is growing. Mm-hmm. But my son, I realized that some of the things he picked up way earlier than he should have, basically. Yeah. And I'm not talking about like physical traits. I'm talking about mental traits. So I don't know. I introduced him to books and things like that way early, like he was 2 months, not even 2 months. But he loves books now. And like puzzles, he started solving puzzles when he was, I think, 18 months. So when I put these things up on there, people say, no, 18-month-old is not even supposed to do the puzzle. They don't even know how to kind of, put these things together. And that's when I started realizing the more you introduce them things to, they can actually pick up these things. Mm-hmm. I would say he was not very active as a child. Like he started walking a little later than any other boy would, but mentally he was a little bit more active than I assumed that he would have been. That's what I meant above and beyond his milestones.
Yeah, so see, I'm not a mother, so I don't know yet. And I grew up in India, which got me more interested because your son, when you post his videos on Instagram, he can say astronaut and he can say words, and he sounds like he's not 2 years old.
Oh, he definitely his nurse.
That's awesome.
His health visitor who comes home. Yeah. She the last time she came home, she said, "So how old is he now? 3.5?" I said, no, he just turned 2 last month. And she looked at me like I was lying. She was like, let me check his records. And she looked at his birthday. Yeah, she was very shocked at the amount of speech he has, the amount of sentences he's constructing. They're almost equivalent to like a 3.5-year-old. And the way he's thinking and communicating is very strong. So I'm really proud of what he has become.
That's awesome. And I hope that so your son is a superstar. I think everyone, on Instagram probably waits for his videos and stuff like that. At least I do.
I'm so happy to hear that. When we had this meeting yesterday with the fellow science lovers, and some of those said the same thing. They were like, "Oh my God, your videos with your son are so cute." Yeah. And I said, sometimes I feel really wary. Should I post them? Like, is this what really people like to see? I don't know, because they're all sciencey people. But you know what? I don't care. It's part of my life. It's what I do. It's what I have. So I kind of put it out there.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's awesome. So a little bit about, you. Let's get to, your story. This was your son, his story. Now let's talk about a little bit about your story. So so where did you grow up?
No. So I was actually born in India, and some of my early years I grew up in India. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Toronto. Oh, don't ask me when, very long time ago. And then I grew up there. So I completed eventually my undergrad and then my graduate degree. So I would say I spent most of my time in Toronto, in Canada. Okay.
So now you're visiting your family there. That's what you're doing.
Yes. So I'm in Toronto just to see my parents.
Yeah, because you live in UK, right?
UK now. Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, what that was like to be an immigrant. Of course, Canada is, it's the Disneyland of immigrants. Like everyone's nice to each other, and I'm hoping everyone has a great experience. But I'm sure you had your own unique experience of not being from that country. How was that like growing up?
So I have to be very honest. I was in a cultural shock for a bit because except for my parents, I don't come from a very open-minded family. Mm-hmm. But my parents are a different case. Let's just say altogether. They are a bit more they're not a bit. They're actually a lot more unorthodox, and they're a bit more open-minded. But yet, coming from India was a little bit of a cultural shock to me, because people thought differently, people did things differently, and I had to really learn quickly to adjust in that environment. I could see that these things affected me because my grades started to go down, because I didn't know how to respond to certain, environmental cues, what people said. I didn't know what their puns meant.
Yeah. And how old were you?
I must have been like 13, 14, maybe. Yeah, so it was still quite young for me, and at that age, coming from India, it was actually quite young.
Yeah.
But then it didn't stop, actually. I did get used to certain things, but later on I did experience a little bit challenges about, there was some racism I've also experienced, and that sent me into really shockwaves. I was like, oh my God, this happens in the world. But yeah, so I did have fair share of my challenges coming from a different country. But having said that, I absolutely adore Canada. I think it's one of the places I would always want to live in. Even though I'm in UK and I enjoy being part of UK culture, I think there's something that pulls me back towards Canada. I think part of it is my parents, but yeah, most of it is other things that I have, other good things that I've experienced here, like education, for example.
That's awesome. And how are you preparing your son to, I mean, he's too young right now, but I'm sure you think about this, especially, in today's day and age where, things can get volatile real fast. What do you think what do you think the immigrant parents can do to kind of make their kids more aware, maybe, of what's in store?
I do think about it. You're right. Absolutely. Because, the things that I have experienced, I always want to shade my son from that. And I feel like, I really hope he doesn't have to experience that. But truth be told, I am almost 100% sure that he will at some point in his life will be exposed to some or other things that I just mentioned about, whether it's stereotypes, racism, cultural insinuations, or things like that. So my idea is to keep him and raise him in as diverse culture as possible. For example, Toronto itself is a really diverse community. What happened to me was not in Toronto. It actually happened to me in a different city in Canada. But I keep on moving a lot. Me and my husband, we're sort of nomads. We like to keep change in our lives, and we keep a lot of mobility going on. We don't own a house anywhere for that matter. So I think that is one of my way to expose him to different steps of life, different stages of life, different people, different cultures, and to see his reaction. And to my surprise, he is a beautiful human being. He does not see people differently. One of my friends who wears hijab, she's a really good friend of mine. She was so worried that he would actually be scared of her, and he's just 2 years old. So she said, Sonal, I am wearing my niqab and I'm wearing my hijab. Do you think your son will be scared? I said, you know what? There's only one way to find out. Absolutely. She came in and he was such a gentleman to her. And I'm so proud of him that he doesn't see people differently. And
I think kids really don't, right? I mean, I think it's
exactly
the society that kind of puts those labels on everyone. And, that's a wonderful story. And, I agree with, moving and exposing kids to different cultures. My parents did that because, their jobs were very, they got transferred all the time and we moved all the time. So we didn't live in our own house till I actually went off to college. So, that in our house. So, but, we were always like, the new kids, or, we were always like in a new city, or even if it was a new neighborhood. So settling down is just something that doesn't come naturally to me. But at the same time, I can totally see like the benefits it brought me when I had to move for my own job. I moved a lot on the East Coast in the US, and I would just pick up and leave, and it's like, okay, that's all right. And then now I have so many stories to tell, but it really makes you like understand so many different cultures, and also, like as you said, just makes you the best self that you can be, because you've just traveled more than so many other people.
Exactly.
You collect stories,
Absolutely. And deep down, that somehow this is what has made you who you are today.
100%.
How you are going to react to people when you go anywhere in the world, basically.
Yeah. And I'm never afraid of like new people, and, I'm never afraid to like, make new friends. So which you have to do as a survival mechanism when you're moving that much. You need to make friends with people all the time. So it's definitely, something that I've definitely experienced in my life as well. So changing gears here, I really want to know, more about your science journey. And, while we're on the topic of moms in STEM, we talked about your son and, all the things that, he's doing so well. And you also include him in your science communication efforts, which is just wonderful. I think that's your niche. I think that's what your strength is. And that's how we all remember you. That, if you have a story, it's like, oh, okay, it might be a nice, cool video with your son. So, but you say here that your superpower is medical physics. What the hell is medical physics?
Yeah, so I say that because not actually, just like you, Prasha, not a lot of people know what this field is about, okay? And I think I understood very late that not many people know about this field, and I thought, oh, maybe we need to change this, because in this field, I realized that there's so much deficit of people with that kind of skill and strength that could provide potential change, life-changing, life-altering support to what we do. And so medical physics in itself is a field of physics in medicine, basically, use of physics in medical science field. So for example, if a neurosurgeon is doing a surgery, he requires some kind of medical equipment. Who builds those medical equipment? What does he need to know in terms of that equipment to work? Or if someone gets hurt and the doctor says, well, you've got to go get some x-rays or MRI done. How are these MRI billed? There is a whole lot of physics that goes behind building these equipments or building these tools that assist in medical facility. And when people think about medicine, they just think about drugs, they think about surgeries, they think about, doctors, nurses, and these people, but they don't necessarily jump to the conclusion that there is other professions that support this medicine that is saving lives. And that's what medical physicists do. These people are people who are the masterminds behind the physical or the physics aspect of building the technology that takes medicine ahead. So there are different type of medical physicists, basically. Some people might be into developing certain new technology to assist in any medical procedure, whether it's imaging, whether it's surgery and things like that. Other medical physicists are people who actually are more mathematical. So trying to figure out let's take an example of artificial intelligence in medicine. So there's different aspects of medical physics going on out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you have you've built a whole career on this, because you have a diploma in radiation therapy, a bachelor's of science in medical radiation science, an MSc in biomedical physics. So, I mean, you're the expert at all of this stuff. And, when we think about radiation therapy, we think about cancer, because radiation therapy has increased the lifespan of so many, I hate to say common cancers, but, it is definitely increasing longevity for a lot of families. And, having been hit by cancer so many times in my life with people so close to like me, like my grandmother, my father, my aunt, my mom's mom, we have cancer everywhere. It's extremely, it's a disease that I don't know of many families that have not been affected by cancer. Exactly. And it's just sad. But tell us a little bit about, how does radiation therapy work, and, what does it exactly do to help cancer patients?
So in very simple terms, what radiation therapy or this field is all about is using really high energy radiation or treatment beams. Just like sun, the sun's energy that comes, sun's rays are basically radiation. But these radiation that are used in radiation therapy are way, way much higher energy than that comes from the sun. The idea is to focus all this energy into the area of the tumor, for example, anywhere in the body. And literally what that does is damages the DNA of the tumor cells. With various mechanisms that I probably won't go into details at the moment, but the idea is to use this really high energy radiation to target into the tumor and damage its DNA. So DNA, as many people may or may not know, is the building block. It is what controls the growth of many cells. And if you damage it, it basically stumbles and the cells start to die. And that is the basic idea of using radiation to kill cancer. And that's what the field of radiation therapy is.
And what do you do in your day job today? Is it related to radiation, or do you do something different?
So I have, over the years, worn many hats, from being a radiation therapist to being a medical physicist, and now I work for industry. So when I started off as a radiation therapist, my day job was to actually plan the radiation treatment using sophisticated software, specific software that we use for radiation treatment planning, and then deliver that radiation using medical linear accelerators. These are ginormous machines that produce this radiation and precisely and accurately delivers this radiation to the target that we have defined in a patient. And that was my daily job. I used to do that 9 to 5. I used to work here in Toronto, actually, one of the cancer centers. And then I moved on to industry job where my clinical experience was utilized to actually develop these machines for their advancement. So to make them even more accessible, even more high-tech and state-of-the-art. So my job was to basically help support this development process and tell them, okay, well, in the clinic, this is how we currently use. How about we make these changes and make it, so that the clinicians find it more efficient, for example, or the radiation therapist find it more usable and not too clunky, for example. So that is my current job.
And that's so interesting, because I love machines. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I grew up watching how it's made. And since that show has changed my life. I mean, my dad was obsessed with it, and we would watch it all the time. I always wanted to work in factories, and it gave me an appreciation for everything that's around us. And so many of these things are, of course, now coming from STEM fields, because we're interacting so much with technology. That people don't realize it, and they just don't have appreciation for these machines. But every time I see an MRI or a CAT scan or X-ray and stuff, like, I'm just mind blown that how awesome those devices are. By the way, our company, which I work for, makes cables for medical devices, so it's pretty cool.
I'm sure we probably have some of these cables in our machine.
I'm the crazy person who reads the cable legends everywhere I go. So if you work in a WAN cable world, you're reading cables. Like you don't even know, you're talking to me right now, but you probably don't even know that this cable has a writing on it. Like nobody even pays attention to it. And we are reading it. We're like these crazy people who always are like, what is this cable? Whose cable is this? And my husband is like, you are crazy.
Crazy.
You are not even, but I just got sidetracked. But I absolutely have a lot of appreciation for work that not only involves obviously saving lives, but also just the interaction of whole medical field plus the sciences and in your case the physics, and I'm sure there are engineers and computer engineers and electrical engineers, and they're like people just don't have appreciation for how many people. I mean, look around you. there are probably like hundreds of cords, like things that are connecting your whole world.
Exactly.
Are cables. Someone makes those, and it's a lot of people who work together to make it. And that's just, it gets me all excited to talk all about, how all these things come
together. Yeah, exactly.
I know, it's beautiful. So and and you mentioned a little bit about how you went from being in the clinic to the industry, and and being in radiation therapy to then getting your master's in medical physics. I love pivots, and I'm thinking that I'm probably going to change the name of the show to Pivots, and probably just talk about pivots, because I think that's the biggest takeaway I take from a lot of stories. But tell us a little bit about that transition or that journey, and maybe share a little bit about the whole motherhood aspect, because I'm sure becoming a mom might have changed some direction of your career, if it did. Please share with us a little bit about that whole experience of kind of finding your own way in STEM.
Yeah, and absolutely, my motherhood has actually changed the entire course of what I am today and what I wanted to do today. Wanted to be here, but let's start with the initial. Obviously, I never dreamt of becoming or coming to radiation therapy or medical physics field before. My interests have varied over the years. I have changed the course of my life tremendously, believe it or not. At one point, I wanted to be a skydiving professional, like professional skydiver.
I love it. That's awesome.
And then the next time I wanted to be a professional trekker, like, I wanted to take people out on treks to Machu Picchu and things like that. So yes, I have had crazy dreams, and I have changed quite a lot throughout my entire journey in career journey, basically. But I stumbled. But physics was one thing that I always wanted to do. I mean, I knew from the beginning that I have this weird relationship with physics and sciences. So throughout the high school, I kept my courses. Even in the university, when I enrolled, I had no major. I didn't even know what I wanted to major in, basically. I just enrolled in sciences. And I thought, well, I'll figure it out. Because at that time, I was really passionate about, doing a skydiving instructor thing. But eventually ended up in physics courses. And one day in a career seminar, this gentleman came and talked about radiation therapy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They use physics in medicine. That was the first time I actually my eyes lit up, and I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And I changed my major, and I graduated in medical radiation sciences. And I did actually, it was a degree and a diploma, like it was a joint degree and diploma, and I graduated as a radiation therapist. I practiced as a radiation therapist for a bit, but every single day, I used to go in the morning, come back in the evening, and I used to interact with patients, cancer patients, every single day. And I realized, that I'm making change. I'm making difference even if it's a small difference, I'm making difference in their lives. But every evening after my shift ended, there would be the physicists and the engineers would come and actually repair these machines or test them or do the quality assurance on them. And that intrigued me. So I stayed behind and I kind of lurked around to see what they were doing with the machine, because I wanted to see how these machines work. So that's what got me thinking maybe I need to study a bit further. And that's when I decided to do my master's in physics. So that's how my change of career have been taking place. After my master's, I graduated a little early because my wedding was in sight, and I wanted to finish my master's before I got to my wedding.
Nice.
So I graduated early, and my dream was to continue PhD after my wedding, but that didn't happen because I had to change countries. So I lived in India for a bit with my husband, so I couldn't. So that's where my journey ended for education, basically. And then I had my son, after which everything changed. So there was a time where I felt like, this is not where I want to stop. Obviously, I want to keep going, but it didn't. It never happened. So I'm still waiting. Having said that, it's not that I have stopped myself from achieving what I want to. I have been applying to the PhD programs now. I have been accepted in one. So I still have some decisions to make, though.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, you kind of followed your curiosity and, tried to learn something new. I think that whole learning piece gets lost once we leave school, and, we just expect things to like make sense and things to work out. And sometimes we just, especially when you're just fresh out of school, I see this all the time, that people forget that you still have to keep learning and you still have to keep growing, and you're not going to grow until you follow that, ray of, how does this work? How does this happen? That just leads to so many wonderful things. Like in your case, this whole career that you have built out of it. And you went back to India. So that's interesting. That hardly happens. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how was it? So how was the negative culture shock, like, of going backwards? That must have been very interesting.
Yes, it was again a huge culture shock for me.
Yeah.
Because obviously I grew up most of my years in Canada trying to adjust to the Canadian culture. And all of a sudden I was in this new culture, which hypothetically a new culture. I am from India, so it's not really new to me. But when you ease up into something and then if you're thrown into something new, you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I did feel a cultural shock again when I went back to India. But again, I think because I have traveled so much, it didn't take me long to kind of fall back into the exactly. I adjusted pretty quickly, although I did have a lot of ups and downs up there as well, but I think it was a learning curve, let's just say that. I think there's a lot of cultural differences that can stop women in countries like India, especially if you said you got married and you probably moved in with your in-laws or however that went down. It's always just something to people don't realize that there's a lot of work that has to go into, making those moves and again, nurturing new relationships. I don't know if you will feel comfortable sharing this, but was your marriage a love marriage or an arranged marriage? I absolutely feel comfortable sharing that. Mine was a love marriage.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I'm just like, okay, so at least she had a love marriage, so her husband took care of her.
Yes, absolutely. That gentleman definitely took care of me.
That's wonderful. I guess people who are not from India will not get this, but you talk a little bit about the struggle that you had with marking negativity in your life, and not having to please other people. And women do this all the time. Moms do it all the time. My mom still does it. And what would be your advice to mothers or young mothers or mothers who are just getting started and trying to juggle this brand new role and as well as very high demanding careers? How did you overcome this negativity and this pleasing other people mentality?
I didn't. Initially, I was a wreck. I have to be really honest. I didn't overcome because everything bothered me. Everything, every person who said something to me. Yes, absolutely, Prasha. Yeah. And I think it's the hardest thing that mothers have to go through because it's like all of a sudden you're under this constant judgmental eye of every person telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It was the hardest part of my life, actually. Even though I've had previous ups and downs, I think after becoming mother, I think I lost touch with humanity completely. Wow. Because it's not just about your career. It's about you being mother is entirely a new role that you're given now, and this little person is completely dependent on you. It doesn't even come with manual, so you don't even know what's right and wrong, and there are 10,000 people telling you don't do this, do that, don't do it. And you're trying to figure out what's right and wrong for your child. So my advice to all these mothers out there, whether they're new or they're single, or they are doing it all alone, or they are doing it with their partners, whether they have support or they don't have support, whether they are mothers of 4 children or 1 child, whether they are, mothers of a newborn or a 12-year-old. I think the key that I have discovered is to take one day at a time and count to 10 before you react to anything.
Good advice.
Because, I've been in a position where people have told me, now you have a child, you probably don't need to work. Your sole job is to look after your kid. I've been in that situation, Prasha. And I probably reacted the way I shouldn't have. And then there is another side where people are saying, well, you're still breastfeeding? Isn't your child like 18 months old? It's like, oh my God, why do everybody have to judge me for everything that I do?
Yeah.
So my advice is really to just take one day at a time and do what your guts tell you to do.
Yeah.
Listen to people, but only do what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's valid for anyone. I don't think you just for mothers, but I guess even women in general, or even men, anyone.
Absolutely.
I guess we stress ourselves out by just trying to either come back with a reply to people that don't need to be replied to, or waste energy on, definitely overthinking a lot. And you're right, it's one day at a time. And people, I was talking to my friend this morning, and we were talking about this. I said people are so hung up on these huge changes. They just want things to get better, and they want it to happen right now. And They don't realize the power of little things. Just absolutely the smallest, tiniest step every single day adds up. And one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, wow, I've come a long, long way. I didn't realize,
And that's so important to realize, actually, that, every tiny single step that you're taking actually adds up eventually. So
hopefully take it in the positive direction. Yeah. And you also mentioned stuff about, and to people who are wondering, where did Sonal mention all this that we are not able to see? So you mentioned it in your form that you told me more about yourself, and that's where I'm reading from. But, you talk about a little bit about, the fact that you finally started taking credit for the work that you were doing. And that's when you start seeing real change, which I think women struggle with this all the time. Yep. And Indians struggle with this all the time because our society is very, it's supposed to you don't talk about yourself. Like you don't, that's not something, at least not in where I grew up. It wasn't something, it's not a very kind way of dealing with people where you talk about yourself or you give yourself credit. So how did you finally start owning it up? How did you do that?
So it actually happened during my internship for radiation therapy, my first week. And I was supposed to shadow this lovely radiation therapist to observe what they're doing. And what happened was we were treating a patient in a certain area, and that radiation therapy by mistake or purposefully, I don't know, but they marked in the wrong area. So I genuinely questioned it, and I said, could you explain me why you put this mark here instead of this position in the lower abdomen where the pancreas are, and this is what we are treating? I think that didn't go really well. The reaction that came really shook me. What she said is, oh my God, you brown girls are so aggressive. I think you should just go cook some curries and not worry about doing all of these things. Wow. I mean, that was something that I'd never experienced before. So for me, it was a huge shock. And I thought, oh my God, I did something wrong. I should just curl up and die. And that really made a huge impact on me. And that really shook me until my supervisor came to me, and luckily she was standing right behind us, watching and observing what we do and say. And that question was genuinely a curiosity as to maybe I missed something, and that's what but pointing out someone's mistake in that manner was not taken very positively. So my supervisors took me immediately to her office and said, Sonal, you did nothing wrong. I think you did absolutely right. And I think you should own up to it because you just pointed out a mistake that could have gone in a really bad direction. But the thing is, like you said, I come from a culture where we don't actually own up to these things, that you've done something really good. So say, hey, I prevented this mistake. But that is one event that I will always remember where I was hit and I kind of bounced back immediately because someone supported me and someone said to me, look, you should be really proud that you did this. Even though in the back of my mind was like, oh my God, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Did I upset this person? And things like that. So I think that was my turning point, really. Before that, I just, shied away from everything. I didn't ask questions that much, but that was my turning point where I decided, you know what? I don't care. If this is going to save someone's life, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And also I think it helps build confidence. Because I think people don't realize confidence is a skill. It's not a personality trait. It's a muscle. You build it. And, when you take steps like that towards, things that matter to you and you set up your non-negotiables and you kind of head down that path of just, okay, I'm going to be confident in the choices I make and I'm going to own up to the good and the bad and the ugly. And, that kind of is really a huge shift in just how life then responds to those things, even at work and, you'll see it everywhere. And that's something I've tried too. And, I think you're absolutely right that that's something that women really in general don't think about. And, they just shy away from confrontation.
Exactly.
Especially if some racist person is there, just like you had, oh my God. Luckily I've never had a racist comment thrown at me. I don't think so. Except for being told like, oh, look, oh, no, I think it has. Okay, one time someone said, and someone said in Texas, they said, oh, you Mexicans are such hard workers. No. You Mexicans are such hard workers. And I said, what? I said, like, I don't even know how to process that. Was it a compliment? Was it not a compliment? I have no clue. But, I always get, they used, because I had much lighter hair at the time, they would call me Mexican all the time.
Oh, man.
Or they'll start talking to me in Spanish. And I mean, I'm like, in California, they would start talking to me in Spanish, like everywhere.
Oh, wow. You're right. Whether is it a compliment, really?
Yeah, it's like you Mexicans are so hardworking. So I guess that was this racist comment made at me. So, which, I mean, I hope it's not getting any worse in America. At least I live on the East Coast. So that's a good thing.
No, lucky you.
So, your story is so wonderful. And I can, again, we can keep chatting all night. To wind things up, what will be that one takeaway for that our audience can get from your story?
I definitely want every person, not just mothers, but even fathers, to remember and take away that the life is chaotic. It's not going to be perfect for anyone, no matter what stage of life you are at. It's always going to throw some balls at you. Mm-hmm. So I want everybody to realize that in the grand scheme of the entire universe, we're really tiny people. And I think what we really need to do is just chill and take one day at a time.
That's awesome. That's so wonderful. And what's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. This is a very complicated question because I have not one, but many. But the recent one that I just read is that I was just reading was Stephen Hawking's Big Answers to Small Questions.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So again, thank you so much, Sonal, for everything that you do and for sharing with us your lovely story. You're so articulate, and it was such a nice time chatting with you. And we hope to collaborate in the future as well.
Yes, we do. Thank you for having me, Prasha.
And that was Sonal with her incredible STEM story. Please use the links in the episode notes to follow Sonal and her amazing work. Next week, we'll be talking to Isabel, who will be our last mom in STEM for this special series. Please use the links in the episode notes to support our Patreon, and please tag us in your posts on social media at Her STEM Story so we can see who's listening. Thank you so much for listening. See you again next week. Bye.